Thank you so much, Angela. Am I saying it right?
Yes, Angela. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning. As you guys already know, welcome to Dativerse. My topic is a basic introduction to SQL Server Docker container. Who am I? I am Jean-Joseph, currently working as a data engineer. I started as a network administrator while supporting DBA and a SQL developer. I love how they do things, and I moved to data administration and development while working with data science teams, supporting them, and I moved from administration and development into data engineering. This is my blog, as you guys can see. This is my blog. This is my email address if you guys want to keep in touch with me. This is my personal Twitter account. This is my user group Twitter account. Actually, we are launching the first ever feature data driven. We have a lot of great speakers lined up. You guys are free to go and register and save your seat, and it's free, completely free. We have close to 900 people registered so far, so I would love you guys to be part of this as well. This is my LinkedIn profile if you guys wanna connect with me. I am based in New Jersey, originally from Haiti. Enough about me. What I will cover with you today is a basic. I'm gonna do a basic introduction to container and concepts, container versus VMware, and then container deployment models, demos. I think 80% of these sessions will be demo, and the key takeaway. First of all, we cannot think of SQL Server container without defining or knowing what is Docker. I got these definitions from Docker website. Docker is an open platform for developing, shipping, and running applications. Docker enables you to separate your applications from your infrastructure so you can deliver software quickly. With Docker, you can manage your infrastructure in the same ways you manage your application by taking advantage of Docker's methodologies for shipping, testing, and developing code quickly. You can significantly reduce the delay between writing code and running it in productions. So you already know exactly what is Docker. So now let's go over container concepts. So what is a container? A container is a way to package application with all the necessary dependencies and configurations. It is portable, artifact, easy to share and move around. It makes deployment and development more efficient. And then one thing I want you to understand is that a container is a running environment for image, and it composed of file system, environment configs, and application image. So what exactly Docker resolves for us? First of all, you don't need to worry about dependencies. What I mean by is that some applications have dependencies. So let's say, for example, on if you have to install SQL Server, you need to think, for example, of .NET Framework. So with Docker, you don't need to even think or worry about this. It makes deployment easy. So that's mean if you have a package, for example, it's easy to share it with others. So what I mean by package is image once you build your image. And then also it makes doing the upgrade process, it makes it easy. So that's mean you don't really have to do all kind of hard work we used to do. And I'm about to demo this at the end as well. It makes environment easy. So that's when you don't need to worry, for example, about if your application work on dev, will it work on QA and UAT or production? Because everything is containerized, so that's mean everything comes as a package. If it works on dev, definitively it will work on UAT, QA, and production. Okay, and then one thing I want you to understand, it's share your operating system. So that's when you're not wasting resources. So speaking of Docker, what are the difference between a physical server or VM and a Docker containers? So when we're looking at VM and Docker containers, let's see exactly the main difference. First, both of them require infrastructure. Both of them require OS to be installed. Here's where the difference comes in. When we're looking at VM need hypervisor, and whereas Docker containers don't need that. The main reason VM need hypervisor is that VM is virtualizing your hardware, whereas Docker virtualizing your operating system. So once Docker daemon installed, you are ready to start deploying your package or your container and then start running your application. Whereas when it comes to VM, you have to think of your kernel and your operating system. Here's the thing. Each operating system have their own capacity resources requirement. So that's mean if you have Windows, some of them may require 4 gigs of RAM as a minimum. Some and then 8 gigs of disk space, and then probably 2 vCPU, correct? So that's mean if we have to install 3 VMs, you already waste 12 gig of RAM, 24 gig of disk space, and 6 vCPU. And whereas those resources can be using for all your Docker container. For example, all those resources that's being allocated for OS, when it comes to VM, you can use that for your container. And then on top of that, you have your application requirement. So for example, you can clearly see when it comes to VM, you are wasting a lot of resources, right? So these are, for example, the main difference between VM and Docker containers. Things to remember here is that VM virtualize your hardware and Docker virtualize your operating system. So what are the differences between bundles and isolation? If you have your physical server or VM, you have everything installed on it, correct? When it comes to isolation, so you have your Docker daemon installed. If you need .NET, you have a package for that. You need Ruby, SQL Server, you have a package for that. If you need, for example, JavaScript, you have when I say package, it's image. You have one image specific for that. If you need PHP and you need Postgres, you have a separate image for that. So what are the steps to deploy SQL Server Docker container? First, you have to think of Docker Hub. Docker Hub is where, if you Google Docker Hub, you will go to the corporate site, Docker, and then you will see, for example, a tons of image predefined, and either from Docker itself or from the community. In our case, as we are about to deploy your SQL Server Docker container, our main Docker hub would be Microsoft. So once you select the image that you want to deploy, you have to pull that image. Pull is like you download it from the Docker hub to your local server or computer. So once you have that image, it's sit there. So in order for you to run container, you have to use Docker run. Docker run. So here's the thing. That image, if it's not running, it is just image. If it's running, it is a container. The main difference between pull and run is that pull just download the image and then done. Run is that if the image is not exist, it will download it and then convert the state of that image into container. So as we're speaking about SQL Server Docker container, there are some parameters that are required. Actually, there are 3. The reason why I did not put the third one, I'm about to explain to you why. The first one, you have to accept the license. The second one, you have to pass the password. The third one is the port. The reason why I did not mention it is that if you have only one Docker container running, you don't have to worry about the port. But if you have to deploy multiple containers, the port happen to be required. One announcement, for example, I'm not working or doing any commercial for Windows, but Microsoft mentioned that, announced that they are no longer supporting SQL Server in Windows containers. So if you guys have any SQL Server deployed in Windows container, they are not supported by Microsoft. However, Windows is a company that still supporting it from SQL Server 2008 all the way to 2019. So let's dive into some demo. I'm about to switch my screen. Angela, can you please confirm, for example, if you're able to see my other screen? Let me switch now.
It showed up there for a second, and now I'm not seeing it.
About now?
It's thinking about it. There we go. Yep, I see your VM.
Perfect. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have to go to Docker Hub. In our case, it is Microsoft. In order for me to get the list of all available image, so I run this command so I can see all Microsoft available image, SQL Server Microsoft available image. Each one is a different image. In our case, I'm gonna, as I said, the first step is to pull the image. I already pull it, but I just want to execute it and show you exactly. So that means the image is up to date, as you can see here. So there's no need. In order for us to see all kind of image that's being downloaded, we can type, for example, Docker image or Docker image -a. So that means if I execute this, you can see all kind of SQL Server image that's been downloaded. So now let's deploy our first container. This is the third step. So I'm gonna call that container Dativerse. As I said, we have to accept the license, and then we have to pass the parameter, and I'm mapping SQL Server port. So now I'm using this version of image that we just download here. So now let me, for example, run this. What I'm doing here, as you can see, I'm just naming my container Dativerse, accepting the license, and then put the password, map the port, and then use this. So if I go now, for example, and say Docker PS, Docker PS will display all warning containers. As you can see, I have Dativerse, and it's been up creating for 23 seconds and up for 21 seconds. So if I want to connect to it, so guess what happened? Give me 1 second, guys. Let me tell the kids to be quiet a little bit. So now, let me execute this and explaining what I'm doing. As you can see here, I'm connecting, interacting to SQL Server container. This is the password. What information that I'm looking for? I'm looking for the computer physical BIOS name, right? But when we're looking at here, this information is not valid. So there's nothing you can do. You cannot understand this information. So in order for you to resolve this, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to remove this. Let me remove this Docker. That parameter dash F mean, even though if the container is running, remove it. So if you don't put this, if the container is running, you won't be able to remove it. So let me run this and explain to you the main difference. So here I am passing the container name, and it is the same command. The only difference is that I mentioned the host name, as you can see, and the host name, I want it to be the same as the give me 1 second, guys. It seems like my kids are still hold on. Give me 1 quick second. Sorry about that. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. So now if I select this, as you can see now, I'm able to see Dativerse. Yeah. So that's mean guess what happened? So we can connect to that. Let me do this first, and I will explain the code. Yep. So what I'm doing here, I am connecting to SQL Server, creating a database, use that database, create a table, insert into that database, it works. So that's mean, as you can see, and then it return, it works. That's the same thing we are doing here. So there are some comments that I want to share with you. There is Docker PS that will show you all running container, and then there is Docker PS-A that will show you all, even though if it's running, if it's not running, it will show it to you. If you want to stop a container, you have to use Docker container stop, as you can see. So now it is stopping. If I say, for example, Docker PS, I will not get any result returned. However, if I say Docker PS-A, you will see that it will tell there is 1 record return. So it's existed in 12 seconds. So if you want to stop all containers, this is the command you can do, even right to stop all running containers. So if you want to stop a container, you have to use Docker container stop. So now I start the container. If I type Docker PS 1 more time, I will be able to see that It's been up for 8 seconds. If I want to restart all containers, this is the command that will do that. If I want to start all containers. If I want to restart a container, for example, I can restart it. Yep, and then if I say docker ps again, I just restarted. You will see, for example, it's restart since 3 seconds. If I want to restart all container, this is the command that will do that. One command that I like is inspect. Inspect is a great command that will give you kind of a lot of information, especially when it comes to debugging. Like you can see the MAC address. Give me a second, let me show you. You can see the gateway. You can see the IP address. You can see the port that's being mapped. And then you can see the version. And the bad thing is, if you are deploying, for example, Docker like that, you don't think of security and best practices. Anybody who have access to your server will be able to get access to your password. So one thing you need to think of, if you're looking at the environment, we accept these are the environment, we accept the license, and then this is the path. So that's been, there's a tons of information. You can see the state as well. If it's running or not, you can see it. You understand? And then you can get so much information. This is the process ID. It's a very useful thing. And sometimes you may even need to change how that data being displayed. You can customize it. As you can see, this is the container ID, the image, up about a minute. This is the status. This is the network. We use the default network. This is the port. And then that, the image name. Also, if you want to filter things that is created but existed, this is the command that you can use. And also use what I'm going to do now. I'm going to create a new folder, move a backup file. This is a new folder first that I'm going to create. I'm going to call that new folder. This is the path name that I'm going to call it. So let me execute this. Okay, it is created. I am about to copy these backup files. Let me come here. Give me a second. This is the backup file from my VM. I'm going to copy this backup file to Docker container that I just created, and which is Dativerse. The copy is done. So now guess what happened? I can interact with that Docker like it was a real operating system. I can use ls. Give me a second. I can change to that directory. And then I can say ls and see my backup files. Right. You can interact with Docker like it was a real operating system. So now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect to that server, and I'm going to select how many database we have to that container. As you can see, this is the database we created. So now we don't have AdventureWorks. Let me execute this and I will explain it to you. What I'm doing here is connecting to my Docker container, restoring AdventureWorks 2017, and then I just need the state for every 10 seconds, as you can see. For every 10 seconds, I got the percentage. So now if I go and verify if my restore has been completed successfully, what I'm going to do now is connecting to my Docker and then select how many database. So we have AdventureWorks that's being restored successfully. If you need to know all kind of volume, so we have to use Docker volume ls. As you can see, we don't have any volume. We can create volume with Docker volume create SQL data. This is the volume, and then if we say Docker volume ls, you will see that we have that volume. We can inspect that volume, because inspect is one of great command that will allow you to get more information about your instance. For example, I see the driver, it's local. I see where it's been mapped, the mountain, map point, and I can see the name and the scope as well, as the scope is local. So now I'm gonna create another drive, another container, and call it local drive. What I'm going to do is that one thing I want you to understand, when you're deploying a SQL Server Docker container, it does not persist your data. In order for you to persist your data, you have to use to map some drive. However, if you're doing it this way, it's great. But one thing I want you to understand, if your your container is crashed, you may be in trouble. You may not be able to recover your data, or you may, depend of the level of the issue. But you can still map a local drive and kind of make your data persist, which is not the best way. As you can see, so what I'm doing here, this is the password, and I'm using the same image. And then this is the volume that I created, and I map that volume to this. So that's mean this is not the best way to persist data. The best way to do it, not really the best way, because this is a standalone script, but if you are using a standalone script and then you want to persist your data, this will be the best way. I just remove that container. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, if for example, I go here and show you that directory does not exist, but you can create it as well if it exists or not, depending of the level of permissions, you should be able to create it. So I am about to map my local drive from my VM to SQL Server Docker container. So let me execute this. So what I'm doing here, this is the directory. Let me give it access to create it. What I'm doing here, this is the directory. And then if I come here now and request for the same thing, you will see that I have this. So it's gonna go and create the data. So if the data directory is not created yet, so that's mean it's still in progress. Right, so as you can see now, even though if your container is crashed, you're not able to recover it, at least you will have your data persist if you're using standalone script. Let me see if it's completed. Yep, we have data. So I think it is completed. So now here's the thing. Let's go and interact with it. We can interact with SQL Server container. Let's interact with it. Sometimes if you get this error message, that doesn't mean your password is not is wrong. So that's when SQL Server is not ready to accept a connections. If I re-execute it again, I may end up, as you can see now, I'm able to connect. So guess what happened? I can, for example, if I say select, I think it's fee. If I say select, okay, everything from master files, go. Oh, sorry guys. Go. Give me 1 second. Go. Select everything from sys. Sys, that master file. You will see, for example, the location, exactly where we mapped it. So yeah, so that's mean if I create a database, give me 1 second, let me create a database, create a database, and then I'm gonna call it this demo. If you go back to our data directory, you will see this demo created. So that's mean even though if the container is crashed and you're not able to recover it, guess what happened? You still have your data. Let me exit. Okay. If we want to read the log, we can read the log. As you can see. Okay, and then if we want, for example, to read the last 10 log record, we can do that. Yep. Also, if you want to have more details, that could be expensive depending on your environment, but it's possible. This will give you all kind of details. And then, for example, if you can list all your log as well using this command. But sometimes as a DBA, let me execute this. So, and I will explain it. This is a second container that I am deploying. Yep, let me give it access. So as a DBA, it always best to separate the data file from the log file, as you can see, and then mention your backup directory. This is what I'm doing. So as you can see, there are some environment where you tell, for example, your container, this is exactly where I need the data. This is exactly where I need the log. And then this is exactly where I need the backup. But when you deploy SQL Server container, agent job is not enabled. You can mention some environment for that. And I said, I want agent job to be enabled. This is the port. As you can see, I'm mapping each drive to the one that I specify here. If I select this, you will see I'm mapping the data, the SQL, my MS SQL _2 data to this directory. If I go and select this one, let me copy this. You will see, for example, we have data, and then we have the log, and then we have the error logs, for example. As you can see, and then we have the secret as well, and you do have access. If I issue a backup, the backup will dump here as well. Okay, so you can interact with it, but I think the time is kind of compressed. Let me remove all the container that I created. Perfect. So now using this way is great. You using standalone script is great, but one thing I'm about to tell you is that it's not really the best way to do it. You can use Docker Compose. For example, as you can see, I'm using Docker Compose. What is Docker Compose? Docker Compose allows you to compile all your application dependencies within one. Let's say if you have application that depend on SQL Server, depend on .NET, depend on JavaScript, you can have one Docker file, YAML files, and then you configure all your services. Like I'm doing here, I'm using the version 3.7. I'm defining the service as SQL Server, and I'm using environment variable to pass the value. If I go in my environment variable, you will see the container name is .cverse. This is the password. This is where my data directory, my log directory, this is my backup directory. If you pay attention of this, for example, you will see this is exactly the same information. And I'm using Dockerfile to, for example, download the image, run as root, and then create the directory, and then start SQL Server services. So now, if I go and change my directory to, give me 1 second, to this one. Sorry guys. CD. So if I say Docker Compose up, if I say Docker Compose up, so what happened? It's gonna go and create SQL Server Docker container. The good thing of Docker Compose is that it's creating the network for you. So you don't have to worry. You can still mention it, but you don't have to worry about it. So this is the directory that it's creating. It just needs access to your operating system, right? So as you can see, it gives you all kind of information. If I go to a different terminal and I say Docker PS, you will see, for example, we have demo 1 SQL Server, and then it's up for like 14 seconds. So if you want, you can get more information, but I would highly suggest you to think of using Docker Compose YAML file instead of using standalone script to deploy your Docker container. So Angela, I'm not sure exactly what time I have to stop for questions, but I do have some other demo, and I want to know exactly will I have enough time for that? Hello?
Hey, Sean, I'm here. Sorry, I can't find the mute button.
Yeah, that's fine. Will I have enough time to go ahead and do my third demo, or?
You've got about 15 plus 7, 22 minutes left.
Perfect, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So one thing that I wanna, for example, to show you before I go to the demo through Docker container, where I have multiple kind of services. But as I will share the script, I may not have time to do that, but it's the same thing, guys. As you can see, I'm defining SQL Server services, and I'm using health check to do some tests and wait for 10 seconds. And then also I have Postgres that I'm as a service as well. And I create a network just for Postgres, and then defining my data volume, right? And then this is the network for each one. But I will share that script with William and Ben, so this way he can share a course with you. But what I really like to demo now is show you, for example, how can you upgrade SQL Server Docker container. For example, let me see what volume do we have. If you're looking at now, okay, let me go and bring the service down. If I say Docker Compose, give me a second, hold on. Let me bring the service down. Let me see CD demo 1. Okay, that's fine. Let me get this one. Okay, give me 1 second. CD. CD demo 1. Okay, perfect. So now if I say Docker compose down, it's gonna go and what happened? Oh, perfect. Sorry about that, guys. If I say Docker compose down, so what will happen? It's gonna go and shut down the services. Where, for example, you don't have to worry about like if the service is up or if the service is down, like it's stopping the service. If we go to the other terminal, you will see the service have been stopped. So for example, it stop all kind of services and remove Dataverse and remove the network. So that's the beauty of using Docker Compose YAML files. To upgrade, for example, SQL Server, give me a second. To upgrade SQL Server, let me see, for example, so we have one volume called SQL DB data. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another volume and call it, for example, MS SQL directory. So I already downloaded the latest version of 2017. Okay, I'm gonna deploy one app, and then this is the password app. And then remember, for example, this is on SQL Server 2017. This is the directory that this is the local directory. Give me 1 second. What am I getting here? Okay, so that's for the interactions. So just give it a second. Just give it a second. Let me try to reconnect again. Yep, so now I'm able to connect. So if I say point, add version, and I say go, you will see that it is 2017. What I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to create a database and call it SQL Server Upgrade. Okay, and then I'm going to create a table and call it Dataverse. Then that's fine. So what I'm going to do, let me make a selection. Then it seems like it's get it from cache. Let me see. Yep. So okay, there were none. So that's fine. I'll probably press enter twice. Okay. So now, okay, let me select. This is the data that we currently have. And then remember the version was 20. 2017, as you can see. So now, if there is a requirement where we need to, for example, upgrade this to 2019 latest version, two things you need to remember. You have to think of grant the access. You have to grant the access. But there are two comments you need to do in order to achieve that. Otherwise, your upgrade may fail. So what I'm going to do is to interact with, let me exit from this one. I'm going to interact with Docker container like it was a real operating system. And then I am executing this command first. Let me copy this, that's fine. Okay, give me 1 second. Perfect, and I'm gonna execute the second command to give SQL Server full access to that. And then I'm gonna exit. Perfect, so now let me exit. Oops, sorry guys. I'm gonna stop the container. And then I am about to pull the latest one, but it's already downloaded. Yep, to save time. Let me execute this and I will explain to you exactly what I am doing here. So what I'm doing here, I'm deploying SQL Server Docker container with the latest file, which is 2019. And then this is the same directory, local directory that we created. If we use a different local directory, it won't work. And then now, let me try to interact with SQL Server. Even though you see this, so that's when the connection is not ready yet. You don't have to worry about that. One thing to remember is that the container name is different. Let me execute this. Yep, just give it a second. It's still in process. The upgrade may take a bit longer. Just give it a second. Yep, so now if we say point at version, we say go, you will see, for example, this is 2019, as you can see, and this is the latest RTM CU12 cumulative update. That's the latest one. So now let me stop. Give me 1 second. Now, in order to switch, you have to rename it. So I am about to stop the container. Let me exit first. I did not exit. Yep, let me exit first. Perfect. So let me say Docker PS. Sorry for my mistake, guys. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I'm gonna rename this one 2017. And then I'm gonna rename 2019, which is app 1, as you can see. For 2019, we call it app 1, right? So I'm gonna rename it to the old one. And then now your upgrade is done. All I have to do is to, for example, start, give me 1 second. The container. Give me 1 second, Docker PS. Okay, perfect. Let me start. This one. Give me 1 second. We rename this to this. Seems like the rename is done. Let me see, Docker PS -a. Perfect. So now let's start this one now. We should, yep. Okay, perfect. So now we started. Okay. Let's see if we can access it now. We can. Let's point add version. You will see this is 2019. Okay, let's select name from sys.databases, and then you will see that the upgrade is there. Okay, let's use this one. Okay, go. Perfect. Let's select I think the table name should be there on 17, correct? So let me select everything from Dataverse. And then you will see that. Give me once again. What DB did I create it? Yep, the DB is this one. Yep, so it should work. For some reason, give me 1 second. Select name from sys.table. Okay. Yep. For some reason, guys, I'm not sure what happened. The demo is not working for this one, but I have done it multiple times. Yep. So let's keep this way. Let's keep it there. Yep. So this is the Docker. I think I'm done with the demo. That's the last Docker Compose YAML files. So this, I'm not sure we will have time. I'm gonna go back to my slide deck. Give me a second, guys. Let me switch to a different screen. One thing, for example, one thing when it comes to Docker Compose options is that there are a few options you need to understand. If you want to build image, you have to do this. If you want to remove, for example, your Docker container, you have to use Docker Compose. If you want to bring it up and down, like I just demo, you have to do that. If you want to start, you have to do that. These are the most common, the most famous command you're gonna use when you're using Docker Compose YAML file. And then this is Docker Compose exec. We also have the log if you want to read the log, and then you can overwrite. For example, if you have a Docker container YAML file, and for dev doing the deployment, you can overwrite dev on the fly. And then so there are Swarm and Kubernetes, but I would love, instead of do the difference between Swarm, because Swarm is still Docker, but I prefer to do it versus Kubernetes. The Docker is that It's a container isolated environment for application, whereas Kubernetes is infrastructure for managing multiple containers. And then for Docker, it's automated building and deploying application for continuous integrations, whereas for Kubernetes, it's automated build, scheduling and managing of application container. So container platform for Docker for configuring, building, and distributing containers, whereas for Kubernetes, it is ecosystem for managing a cluster of Docker container. That's it. For example, when we think of Docker, we have to think of standalone, right? Even though there's Swarm, but when it comes to enterprise management, Kubernetes would be your best choice. And then the key takeaway is that when you're building your image, make it specific to your application, not to its environment. So that means only put what your application requires. What I mean by dependencies. So again, use environment variable to set up your environment specific aspect. And then make individual container disposal. Do not run multiple lines within one line when using Docker files. So if you do that, so that's when you're not really, you take advantage of the cache. And then use Docker compose file wherever possible, because standalone script does not help. Use the extend command to break Docker compose file up if it's too big or complicated. Sometimes I have seen some very complicated Docker compose YAML files. I would, for example, highly suggest you to break it down, and the extend command is the one that will do that. And then with the Docker compose, one thing I want to mention is that you can scale it as well. For example, if you type Docker compose dash minus help, you will see scale. Let's say, for example, if your application does not depend on any port, so scale could be a good way for you to deploy multiple containers at the same time. Right, and I have my blogs. You guys are free to go. It is big data driven. I have introduction, how can you persist data, part 1 and 2, and then SQL Server Docker compose files. And then your feedback is important to us, guys. Don't forget to rate and review this the presentation. Thank you so much for your participation. If you guys have any question, feel free to let me know.